Unanimously, every parent said, no, we would rather cook meal for 25 to 30 children than pack a box of lunch every morning. They love that experience. They say it's hard work, that one day taking off time to cook meal for the community, but they say it's very satisfying, and the sense of ownership and pride that their child takes in planning the menu as to what they would want to bring to the community is something that they're not willing to let go of.
Welcome to Now What podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Kavya Chandrashekhar. She's a Montessorian. She is well-versed in Montessori, and she lives in India, and I'm thrilled to be able to speak with her. The podcast today is going to be about birth to 3. We're going to look at, it's called Assistant to Infancy, Montessori Environment. These questions and answers, the conversation will be for both caregivers and parents. So Kavya, first of all, thank you for being here to share information about A2I environments. And I have so many questions for you. So thank you. And tell us a bit about yourself and your journey to Montessori and what you're currently doing.
Yogi, thank you so much for inviting me to be on the podcast. It's a lovely opportunity to share with everyone the work that I've done this far, and primarily focused on children from birth to 3 years. Yes, I mean to say, Montessori happened to me almost magically. I was predominantly focused on, doing my postgraduate studies, looking at what does early childcare look like in India. And when I went about literally tapping on everyone's home to understand what are they doing, what does early childcare look like, I saw that many stay-at-home mothers had opened up their homes or have babies or toddlers in their home space. And that got me really thinking to understand, why we do what we do. And as part of my postgraduate studies, I just did a general survey about early childhood care. And I started reading up a lot about the different philosophies that were available. And that point of time in India, there were only 2 books that I could put my hands on, The Secret of Childhood and The Discovery of the Child. And when I started reading that, along with, Waldorf and Reggio Emilia, somehow, Montessori's ideas on observation and the support that needs to be given for children grabbed my attention. It was for a very short time that I worked on the project. But then, I finished my post-graduation, and when I got pulled into a corporate career, overnight, all that work that I'd done on early childhood education came up. And then I just decided literally overnight that, I wanted to pursue early childhood education as a career. And when I was looking at many options, Montessori just appealed to me the most, simply because the way I was raised in India, I lived in a joint family system where we had almost 6 to 7 of us growing up together, from the first plane, the second plane, and the third plane. And many of those ideas resonated deeply. And I felt like, it was beautiful culmination of both the science and the art in order to reach out to young children. And that's the way I got sucked into Montessori. And it was literally an overnight decision. My parents were a bit upset with my decision, that I decided to switch from corporate career into Montessori education. But I think it's one of the best decisions I made in my life. And yes, it's been about 2 decades since I've been involved in Montessori work. It has been transformative, both personally as well as in terms of the impact that we are being able to create here in India from birth to 18 years. So that's the way I got absorbed into Montessori work. Yes.
Wow, you had a joint family, and in your joint family, you spoke about planes of development. So for someone who might not know what planes of developments are, would you mind sharing what those planes of development might be? And in your joint family, were these your cousins? Were they your siblings?
Yes, I'm happy to share that. The joint family, traditionally in India, we have many families sharing the space. My father and his brother, they kind of like, raised families together. So we were like, my parents had three children and my father's brother had four children. So it's predominantly seven of us who grew up together. So the age range was, my elder sister, that's my cousin, she's 10 years older than me. So, that was the range of like, the oldest. And my sibling, my youngest sibling, is 6 years younger than me. So that was the range that we grew up within. So when I'm talking to you about the planes of development, Montessori looked at development from birth to 24 years. She saw, the environment and the support that's being given for birth to 6 looks very different from the 6 years to 12 years. And the help and support that's given to the 12 to 18 years looks very different from that of the 18 to 24 years. And those are the planes of development. Of course, the physical characteristics and the psychological characteristics for each plane of development needs to be understood very well so that we can provide an environment that supports development at that stage. Usually when a child comes into our care, it's very important that we're cognizant of this physical characteristics and psychological characteristics so we can create a nurturing environment. And the environment needs to shift and change. And our attitude, as caregivers, as well as educators or parents, needs to take into cognizance that this child is developing, is shifting and changing. So that's a brief idea about the planes of development. And I was lucky to experience this in the joint family system here in India. So for me, when I reflect back, I think most of my learning happened at home more than in my school. The school became a place where I would check in and check out from 8 to 4. But when I reflect back, I think a lot of my learning in terms of the building skill and capacity happened at home. You had 4 adults taking care of you. We all grew up with each other. I don't remember very clearly my parents watching over me constantly. We all just took care of each other. We grew up with each other. I have lots of memories of interaction with my siblings, with my cousins, planning the day, helping out at home, washing, cleaning, along with the academic learning. It was just integrated. You came home and you had to do some chores every day because it was a huge family. Food would be prepared and you had to set the table and get things organized, clean up. You had to attend to your laundry. During the summer break, if my grandmother came over, and if they were making food, they were making food for many families, like your savory items. So we would all be given tasks to do. And that was part of our living, day-to-day living. So we were involved in day-to-day life, and I don't remember spending a lot of time in front of the television because there was only one television and and that I remember distinctly spending maybe an hour or so over the weekend or maybe maximum 2 hours. But mostly we spent a lot of time doing chores at home. And if we were not doing chores at home, we were doing homework from school. And both had to be taken up. And it was just matter of life, living life.
What a beautiful experience having siblings, your own biological. Well, they're all biological because they're 2 uncles. And I appreciated hearing you say,
Yeah.
my sister, it's a cousin, but sister. And we shared opportunities together. And I bet you even watched television that 1 hour together and you were inseparable. Now, you also own a Montessori program. Can you tell us about how did you decide, or did you go to school to become a principal of a school? How did you start your school? And what types of programs do you offer in terms of Montessori levels at your school?
I'm happy to share about that. I never set out to start a school. I wanted to work with children. That was my primary goal. I knew when I did my Montessori training that, I wanted to spend a lot of time working with children. So I started working in the children's house. I worked for a school here in Bangalore. And then, I realized when I was in the children's house, where I spent about maybe close to 5 years, that the child who came in at 2.5 was very different. Somehow I understood the child at 3, but at 2.5, I felt many times with every child that it took from me a different attitude and temperament to work with that child. Somehow I was able to reach out to children between the age group of 3 to 6 effortlessly. But this young child who would come in at 2.5, I would be like, requires a different kind of understanding. And I knew they needed to be looked at differently, but I was really not able to pinpoint what was it, and I would go and read Montessori's books, and still I was struggling with the practical ways of addressing the needs of this young child. I knew something was slightly different, but I was not able to wrap my head around. And I felt like, I was just about managing with them. And I didn't want to manage with them. I really wanted to understand who is this child at 2.5. That's when, I got to know about the Birth to Three course that was offered at the Montessori Institute in Denver. We didn't have access to Birth to Three course in India at that point of time. I came to Denver, did the Birth to Three course, came back to India, wanted to set up the toddler community, but I felt like India was not yet ready to send such young children to a community. Because in India, if you know about India, we have a lot of extended family care, help and support. Of course, it's shifting and changing right now. But back in 2008, the idea of children learning or children being given the right kind of help was not seen as a useful help. It was seen as, why do we have to send them to a school so early? Because they should be playing, they should be exploring, and when you send them to school, the idea of school is they sit in one place for long periods of time, right? And they've been instructed to do things. Somehow that took a lot of time to shift and change in India to help parents and general public understand that Montessori is about supporting life. It's not about suppressing the needs of this young child. And when I came back to India after the training, as part of the training, I had to observe children from birth to 3. So I had to observe a few families taking care of the infants from birth to 3. And those families came up to me and said, "Oh, we really like the observations that you're making. And when you come for observation, you have useful suggestions and tips to give us. Can we do something together?" It came from a group of parents, 4 to 5 parents who came together. And literally, I would have a small little box in which I would carry few developmental aids and move from one home to the other once a week. And we would unpack these handmade, developmental aids. And then we would spend some time talking about who is this young child. And it would be a very casual conversation with those 4 to 5 families. I would address what was on top of their mind. Someone would say, I'm really struggling with putting a sleep routine in place. Or someone would say that, talk about breastfeeding. How long should I breastfeed? So it was almost like a community of parents that were there to support each other, answer each other's questions and give clarifications. But most importantly, I stepped back as an observer to only step in to answer or clarify differences of opinion, but predominantly empowering the parents to believe in their instinct, supporting that belief system. So this community of parents came to me when their children was just maybe about 6, 7 months. We did this unboxing, boxing every week from one family to the other. But the most beautiful part of those parent and infant session was each family would prepare something and we would come down at the end of 30 minutes to 40 minutes to eat with the infant, to sing a song, to read a book. And they became the advocates for the Montessori method of, education. And they were the ones who pushed me and said, like, oh, they're now walking. Why don't you start a toddler community? So we took up a small little space with maybe just 4 families and we started the toddler community. And once those children became 2.5, I was pushed to take up the AMI 3 to 6 training and we started the children's house. And we had 4 to 5 years of children moving on to regular schools after they finished the children's house. all of them stayed. All of them stayed and finished the toddler community and the children's house. And about 4 years or 5 years down the line, again, a group of 6 parents came up to me who had finished the Children's House program and said, if you're not starting, they're going to continue to stay in Children's House if you're not going to offer Montessori education beyond 6 years. So I went to London, I went to Maria Montessori Institute and did the 6 to 12 training. Yeah, we set up the elementary environment out of a small little, maybe under 1,000 square feet room. And then we grew, and then right now we have the elementary environment catering to children, anywhere between 50 to 60 children in the elementary environment. This year, again, we had 4 to 5 parents who came up to me and said, you should offer the adolescent program. So I went to Ohio, trained with Laurie to do the 12 to 18. We've just about set up the adolescent program for children from 12 to 18 years. In a nutshell, parents drove the program here in India. So our school goes by the name the Montessori School, which is for birth to 6 years, and Kriya Sthala, which means a place of creation for children from 6 years to 18 years. So right now in India, we are offering a program for children from birth to 18 years, embedded and absorbed in Montessori philosophy. And it's been a deeply rewarding experience, not just for me, but also the team of people that are engaged in this work from birth to 18 years. This is something that we are deeply committed to, because I think finding good Montessori programs that echo the implementation, I think, is very few, very rare. For us, the mission is being to offer a high fidelity Montessori program from birth to 18 years here in Bangalore, India.
Wow, Kavya, the story is so inspiring, and there's so many people who really want their children to have this environment. So accidentally, like you did, you were passionate about early childhood and to understand children better. And you spoke about the A to I environment, which is called the toddler environment, or assistant to infancy, which is from 0 to 3, or 3 months, 4 months is when they come into our environment. CASA is for children who are 3 years to 6 years. We also call it elementary, or 6 to 12-year-olds. And now you have the adolescent program, which is for age 12 all the way to 18. And the support of the parents. And I think that happens when we all together understand Montessori. The true essence of what Maria Montessori looked for is to follow the child through the different age groups and just follow their interest and give them aid to life that we speak about often. And you were able to just create that with your family is beautiful for me. It's something, a little disclaimer here is, when my children were younger, I really had that same thing. I was not at a Montessori program. I was in corporation doing my work. And after they went to a Montessori school, it was just, I really needed them to have the same program, which was Association Montessori International program. It was a recognized school. And I had moved to San Diego and I could not find a program. And there are a lot of beautiful Montessoris out there too. I'm not a snob thinking, they need to be one way or the other. However, when the pedagogy is beautifully explained in the training, and when the guides, we call teachers, when they take that on, when they share this information with parents, and that collaborative effort that happens between the school, the parents, those programs are the most successful. And I was successful in finding something like that. And I had witnessed a true Montessori program where there was that collaboration with the school, with the parents. And we were all a team. We had gardening together. We had celebrations of all the holidays together. Children were able to contribute in the classroom. Therefore, I became a Montessori guide 3 to 6 because my children were that age. And I started in my home, like you did with different schools. In my case, it was in my kitchen dining room that turned into a Montessori program with this beautiful 12 parents that took us out of the home to a larger school because we just had the need. And then primary program, and we couldn't keep up because the space. And I loved hearing in different countries, we don't have restrictions to keep us from doing something good. So in my case, we needed permits, so we could only have 12 students because of the space limitation.
Yeah.
And the elementary went all the way, we had lower and upper elementary at times, but the numbers always dwindled. So I'm excited to talk with you more, especially based on this 2.5-year-old, because I too face those challenges when my guides, my teachers would have these students that would come in. The students would come in at 2.5 into the classroom. Some were quite capable, and there were some that really, and it's not that they're capable or not, they were developmentally at a different phase when they moved into that program. And it creates a challenge to understand and to sit back and look. So just to kind of talk about it a bit, in different countries, we have different guidelines and laws. So in United States, in California, where I live, and where we have the school, we had certain space limitation, how many teachers with how many children limitation. So we had to adapt the Montessori to meet the needs of the state regulations. Sometimes those regulations call for 2.5-year-olds to go up into the primary because they need to be toilet trained. If they're 3, they need to move out of this program. We don't follow the child. And when we follow the child, we have these amazing results. And why I'm talking about this, if there are more of us creating laws around the world based on the needs of the children versus the ages of children, I think we would be able to support children developmentally in a way that they don't feel inferior or superior, but they just feel capable. And with capacity comes so much, right? We can change nations. Why are the first 3 years of life, right? It's considered this critical period in child development. And in Montessori, would you be able to share a little bit of theory and examples of why this would be the most important critical year?
I loved listening to the work that you have done, Yogi. Thank you so much for sharing. There are many parents, I must say. And I'm happy to share with you why birth to 3 is so critical and important. The most important thing that we have to kind of as educators and caregivers and parents, we really have to literally spend a lot of time understanding the child from birth to 3 because it's foundational. I am a strong advocate, and I'm sure that world over research is also pointing towards this, that if we really establish a solid foundation in terms of the architecture of the brain during the first 3 years of life, they've done great service towards supporting natural human development. And I see this day in and day out in my work with parents, in my work with young children in birth to 3. One of the reasons why this age group is so important is, unlike any other species, this human child at birth has a lot of work to do. And the first 3 years become crucial in terms of the environment that we create in enabling this development. Be it language or movement, both are critical, during the first 3 years of life. And most importantly, there is this golden opportunity for the right kind of nutrition to be given. And if we take care that we given the right kind of nutrition, I just feel like, really done service towards human development. And this is also a time there is a huge ask out of us, the human environment, to be present, especially during the first 6 to 8 weeks, to be fully present in order to receive this young child. Because during those first 6 to 8 weeks, if the infant receives the information from the environment that every need of mine is going to be met, then he or she develops trust in the world. Oh my God, this is such a safe place to be in. I'm so delighted to be here. Everyone over here meets my needs. And if you look at very closely, this infant needs just one primary caregiver who's there to address his needs. And post those 6 to 8 weeks, even if you took some time to address his need or her need, it's fine. But during those 6 to 8 weeks, there's a need for this almost like an intimate, secure attachment.
Yeah.
And once they have that attachment, their ability to understand this world, explore this world is exponential. They need that attachment figure And that I think can come from a human being, a primary caregiver who's there for this child. In an ideal world, we would want this to be the mother who is given birth. But any person, if not for the mother, who's there to meet the needs of this young child, would have given this child a huge gift in terms of his optimal development. And also, I think I don't have to stress on this fact. They come with so many possibilities in terms of neural connections. You need to be able to provide opportunities for movement, provide opportunities for language development. So all of the networking is happening so that the neural connections are happening. And for the neural connections to happen, they need a person who's communicating. They need a person who's there to respond to the needs. They also need an environment which supports movement development. And I would say secure attachment, neural connections, language development, and motor development, if they are optimal during the first 3 years, we have really laid a solid foundation for this human being to develop optimally.
So it sounds like the foundation, the time that we take to observe and understand our child, it's probably the most crucial part in our child's development. So how does Montessori theory approach learning and development for 0 to 3?
Montessori theory across all planes, not just specific to birth to 3, is dependent on observation. It really, your compass, your guiding compass is observation. You need to observe children in your care and kind of respond to their needs. What you want to really offer at any plane of development, not just specific to birth to 3, is this intelligent love. I'm here to support you in order to enable you to discover your true potential. So Montessori theory, if you're asking me in practice, what does it look like? You really want to provide this child under 3 years a place to sleep without unrestricted movements, and a place to maybe a consistent place where he or she knows this is where I'll be fed, a consistent place where the infant receives the information, oh, I'm brought here if I need to be changed. So these are the critical aspects, and if this kind of a preparation of environment is done, physically I'm talking about, then it's much more easier for the infant to transition to understanding the world around them. They've come into this world they have absolutely no knowledge about. And by creating a place for sleeping, or creating a small little space for feeding, changing, or bathing, you're creating points of reference that enables them to trust their world. You're creating routines, you're creating consistency. And then the knowledge that the child gets from the environment is exponential, rather than having an environment that things keep shifting and changing every day. And also, of course, a place for moving. If I'm awake, I spend a lot of time over here. And what we really want is a space where they can get in and get out. And of course, you have to keep safety in mind. Safety is important. And what we recommend for movement is firm mattress on the floor. The child can practice a lot of movement opportunities and clothing that supports movement rather than restricting the movement. This child has made this transition from the womb to the world to move. It's a born to move. So you really want to provide opportunities for that movement. And most importantly, in order to establish that secure attachment, a caring, loving educator, parent, or a primary caregiver who's there to say, I'm here to help you. I'm here to respond to your needs. This is what they need. Yeah, and that's how Montessori principle translates. Some of the Montessori principles translates in order to meet the needs of this young infant. I want to be careful over here. When we talk about creating a space, we feel like it's it needs to be elaborate. We need to have a lot of space. It's not that. I've observed less than 500 square feet homes in India, which are able to do this because they're so limited in space that they have designated nooks and corners for everything to happen as life is happening. They've not even thought about it in the Montessori way, but the way of life is such that you have such limited spaces You had to organize yourself efficiently. So it's just about being aware that this child needs to move. And we're going to provide a safe space where they can move in an uninhibited way. And also mean that the climate is tropical, right? And sometimes the summers can be really hot. So most of the time I've seen babies in just their nappies on the floor spending a lot of time, and the movement opportunities that they get is phenomenal. Yeah.
Wow. The more they crawl and explore and find all the stuff, the better it is. And I just love that. And the floor bed. I know this is a podcast that's listened internationally, and those who might be listening are wondering about this mattress on the floor. Because in so many cultures, we're thinking about the crib and the bars and the crib. So what is the reason why in a Montessori program we use a floor bed?
One of the reasons, the recommendation to have the floor bed is so that the child feels like he has control over his space rather than being dependent on the others to meet his day-to-day needs. So if he's tired, he can crawl up and get onto the mattress for a sleep, or get to the place where he can exercise some movement opportunities, a different kind of mat. When you have a crib, then the infant is dependent on the adult. Knowingly or unknowingly, it's almost like you're scheduling the infant's day, not necessarily in favor of what works for the infant, but what works for the adult. You schedule the infant's sleep and the infant's movement opportunities based on your schedule. And sometimes that may not always be beneficial for optimal human development. Also, with cribs, you have a very segmented vision. Unless you're lying down on the back and you're looking up, you really don't know what's there below you. And when you're looking at the world on the either side, you get a very segmented vision of the world. But if you're on the floor bed, you get a full vision of your environment, and they're really interested in understanding the environment. Because they want to, when they are just up and about crawling or cruising, they're like, oh, I've been watching that for such a long time. I want to make my way there and go and see what it is like. So you have a fuller understanding of your environment. And what happens when you have a fuller understanding? I think you have great amount of, confidence in exploring that. And when you're unsure about what's below you or above you, you're also unsure about exploring your environment. The flow bed is predominantly to drive the child towards a lot of movement, movement that is not scheduled by the adult environment. And of course, you want it to be extremely safe. You want to take care, the height of the mattress is not too much. It's just the right amount so that the child can get in and get out. And even if the child were to roll over, the child is safe.
Yeah, safety is a huge consideration in a Montessori environment. It's beautifully prepared by a prepared adult, and we'll talk a little bit about prepared adult at some point today if we have time. But there are different areas that you spoke about in a Montessori environment. So let's talk about the school environment first, and then we'll go to the home.
Yes, I'm happy to talk about the environment for children from birth to 3. Ideally, the first 2 to 3 months, it's good for the baby to stay with the primary caregiver. We highly recommend it. And only if both the parents are working and they cannot afford it. Especially in India, we have nannies to take care of the babies over here, or extended family members like grandparents, which may not be the reality for many cultures. So if both parents need to work and they're looking for a program, then I would highly recommend the NIDO program, which is the nest for babies from 3 months to 12 months. And unlike daycare centers, this is a program that's been carefully prepared to meet the needs of the infant from 3 months to the time that they are walking. And you're focusing on providing and enabling the child towards development of movement and development of language. So you will find an area where they can move when they're awake. You'll find an area specifically created where they can sleep. You'll find an area where they can sit down and bottle feed them. Or even when they start eating, when they're able to sit, they start taking some food by themselves. And there's also an area designated for their physical care, like changing them. That has also been created. It's predominantly offering them consistency and supporting optimal movement development and language development. And the program for babies, ideally, we don't want to have too many babies. We want to have about 8 to 9 babies with about 3 prepared adults who are there to take care. And we want these prepared adults to be consistent, because that I spoke to you about the secure attachment, right? And nurturing that early relationship. It's really important that there's consistency in the prepared adults. And then we never know which baby is going to take to which prepared adult, and we have to be willing to accept, whom they prefer and whom they go to, and support the development as such. So that is the program for babies. And once the child starts walking, we have this beautifully prepared toddler community, or the infant community, or the younger students community, which is for children who are walking up until the age of maybe 2.5 to 3 years. They stay there. And this is a community of about maybe anywhere between 10 to 12 children, with one trained guide and one assisting guide. And here they're exploring their world, everything that they've been watching being done to them, they're going to start doing by themselves. It can be simple things like segmenting oranges, slicing bananas, dressing and undressing, using the toilet, lots of creative expression, use of chalk or chunk chalk, use of crayons, and then lots of language. Lots of language that's been offered to this developing infant with a trained guide, where she gives a lot of, where he or she gives a lot of language lessons, and enables the child to understand that, everything has a name. They're interested in understanding, what is this? What is that? They're so interested in the what of everything. You're giving them a lot of names, and also lots of back and forth conversations. Oh, who dropped you to school today? Or they might just start saying something and you're there to listen to them. It's really important that these children from birth to 3 know that there is an adult interested in their conversations, interested in listening to them. That enables them to get this feeling that I'm valued. I'm an important member of this community. So this is in nutshell the toddler community. Of course, there are lots of opportunities for music, singing, and then, movement games. Lots of opportunities for that, and lots of opportunities to be in the outdoors where they can walk at the pace that works for them. They can be engaged in the world around them, touching, feeling, holding, exploring, and really building towards concentration. Their concentration looks very different. They may be engaged in something for a few seconds, and then they move on to something else, and then they come back to something else. And you want to support that concentration building. And it looks very different from the CASA environment, the concentration in the children from birth to 3 years.
So now we could have Montessori parents, and there are a lot of videos and online things, and parents might want to create an environment in their homes which is Montessori based. What are some of the areas to consider? And I appreciated what you said about the space doesn't have to be extremely expensive. It doesn't have to have so many things, and it doesn't have to be large. So for any parent, what are some of the basic things to consider in a home?
Yogi, before I start answering that, I want to talk about, many a times, there's this belief that Montessori means shelves and materials, shelves and activities. And I want to say that, that is secondary. Montessori is opening up the opportunities to do life on a day-to-day basis. Montessori can be done without the shelf and without the expensive materials or the developmental aids. It can be made possible just with things that we put together at home, especially for children from birth to 3. And I'm a strong advocate that can be done at every plane. That's in the 3 to 6 environment, the 6 to 12, or the 12 to 18 as well. So coming back to your question, with that said, the single most important thing for any primary caregiver or educator or parent, especially with children under 3 years, is to be a present, adult. That's the first thing that you want to offer, that you're there to respond to the needs of the child in your care. Because I see more and more that we think that we are doing supporting this young child's development by providing a lot to do with their hands, or explore. But before that comes the presence of a primary caregiver who's there to engage with this child at an emotional level, to be able to say that I'm here to observe you, watch you, and give you everything that you need, emotionally. If that is taken care of, then, that is primary. That is the single most important thing. If that is there, then we move on to opening up our homes to involve this child in day to day life. Even with the baby that's crawling, you can say, can you, I see that basket on the floor. Bring me an apple. Look at the movement opportunity. Look at the language opportunity with that. And then once this child starts to kind of like, is able to, walk with assistance or with is cruising, you can still involve him or her in day to day life. Okay, you need to be changed. Why don't you come with me? Wait for the child to come with you. Give a support so that the child can stand up holding, and then you can support with dressing or undressing rather than doing everything for this child, little by little. The only thing is that it's going to take much more longer if you collaborated with the child than when you did it by yourself. Because I go into so many homes for consultation, and many a time, just life, like dressing and undressing, bathing, is all done to young children. But if you involve them, then I feel like you're taking a big aspect of Montessori principle into the life of the child and enabling this child to have high self-esteem, confidence, and this feeling that I can do this by myself. Oh, I am getting the help that I need. Involving children in day-to-day life would be my single most important recommendation in whatever aspects that you can, because I understand that the home is a space both for the adults and for the young child, somewhere to enable that. It can be a simple thing like setting up a stool near the sinks so that, the child can access the sink, and then making sure that the toilet is set up in such a way that the child can get in and get out independently. There are so many tools now available in the market that you can use based on what is available to ensure that the child is not dependent on you all the time to access the toilet, to access the water source, or to be part of life around you. So I'll give you an example. Traditionally in Indian communities, we did a lot of work on the floor. We sit down on the floor and do the chopping. So the young infant can watch what's happening. What's the life that's happening around you? So either we bring life down, our day-to-day life, to the child's level, or we provide tools so that the child can see what is happening at a higher level. And I want to emphasize on the aspect of safety over here. Because when we are involving young children in life, we have to be mindful of the safety aspect. So this would be my recommendation. And of course, yes, having a small little basket with a few books that the child can have access to, that you can read to the child, that would be lovely too. And if you're a multilingual family like in India, please make sure that you have books from different languages available for this young child. So you are reading, singing in different languages too. That's another opportunity. So these are just some ideas. And of course, yes, I mean to say, like, you can have a small little shelf or even a runner on the floor with few toys that you want the child to manipulate. And remember, with children under 3 years, they outgrow toys easily. So many times we go and invest and buy a lot, but the child has learned it and mastered it in maybe 3-4 weeks. So if you can develop a system where you're building a sense of community with parents who have children under 3 years, and if you're sharing resources, I think it would be great. And any of these toys, the louder they are, avoid it. The more complicated they are, avoid it. Even if you put out a basket with, different kinds of cups of different sizes and they can stack one inside the other, it would work. So look at things that if you observe children, they will show what they're interested in. And if you put out toys that are made at home, and that would be great. And these toys should really support eye-hand coordination and the development, refinement, and development of equilibrium. That is to carry things from one place to other. Really try these big movements that require a lot of effort.
Well, I think it's so doable. Thank you for making it so simple. Everyone has exactly what you've talked about. So it's doable to prepare an environment which is accessible to the child. And it reminds me as you speak and you share about India, my childhood, where things are on the floor, you're crawling around or you're walking. And, my grandmother used to roll the chapatis or breads. As a child, even less than 3, you're given a piece of dough that you can play with and you can help mold it in a circle. And it just gives you so much a sense of accomplishment or contribution in a family. And then when that bread is made and it's served, this, as a child, I remember feeling so much accomplishment. So I think small things to us are pretty huge for young children. They're not so little, they're just developing. And you spoke about something, Kavya, about sensorial exploration. Can you talk about what that means in terms of day-to-day sensorial activities in Montessori?
Yes, I'm happy to talk about that. When Montessori used the word sensorial, she was referring to all of our senses getting the stimuli to engage in. I feel the biggest sensorial exploration can happen in nature for the young child. Spreading out a sheet and letting them lay on the ground. That is such a solid sensorial exploration for this young child. Having said that, I have found with young children, especially children under 3 years, the biggest sensorial exploration happens in the kitchen if they're engaged in food preparation, because every stimuli that they need is with food preparation, and in the toddler community or even in the nido, the way the kitchen, where that's magic for them. Every child will wait for his or her turn to be part of food preparation. We have a lovely area set up for hand coordination, lots of practical life like dishwashing, hand washing, clock washing, all of that is there. Cleaning and dusting is there. And guess which is the most busiest area? Food preparation. Because I think through observation, we can see it gives the right amount of stimuli for the young child to be engaged. And they want to do it again and again and again. They're not happy slicing one banana. They want to slice all the 8 bananas. They're not happy segmenting just one orange. They want to finish up all of the oranges. Engaging young children, be it at home, in the community, with food preparation. I know the laws in different countries are different, but food preparation is magical for a solid sensorial exploration. And depending on the country that you're in, I feel like, if you have restrictions around using knife, you can still offer simple exploration around shelling peas or picking grapes, taking them out. All of those are great. At our school, at the Montessori school, we offer such a variety. They're making breads like rolling chapatis, as you said, washing rice, slicing cucumbers, papayas, mangoes, all of those are happening. Of course, the adult, the prepared guide, prepares them. You can't expect a toddler to take a full papaya and slice it from start to finish. We keep them ready in long slices and they further break it down. So they thoroughly enjoyed that. And anything got to do with cleaning up is a fabulous sensorial exploration. Oh, there's water on the floor. Let's go get the mop and dry it up. And human language. Human language is so solid when you're preparing food. That also is a fabulous auditory stimulation. The human voice is such a strong pull for this young child. If you asked me what would be the sensorial exploration, anything that offers opportunity for the mind and the body to be pulled is a solid sensorial exploration. And I found that to be maximum with food preparation. Of course, working with crayons, working with paint, all of that is exciting, but nothing like preparing food. It's messy, it's squishy, squashy, all of those things. And then I think there's a deep need that gets satisfied when they're engaged in food preparation. It's the busiest area. It's the busiest area.
Kavya, thank you for sharing that. And it just makes me think about so many parents who say, my child is picky and they don't eat this or that. And I wonder if this child had the opportunity to have food preparation time at home, they're more likely to eat what they've made because now they've touched it, they've felt it, they smelled it. And before long, they're going to be curious about trying some of these things. So we're almost out of time, and I'm really sad because I have so many questions for you. So perhaps you'd be willing to come back again and talk about this because I want to know about more about birth to 3. I want to know more about 3 to 6 in elementary. But before we go, I really want to know about food preparation in your school because I had a parent at my school with 2 boys who is now in India at your school because they really wanted to have elementary and middle school. And the boys have been sending me pictures and they sometimes eat spicy food at your school. So who makes this food and how is it prepared for all the children?
Okay, I'm going to talk about that. And I know that this is going to be like, oh my God, how do you manage to get this done? But they have successfully managed to get this done over the last 15 years in our school. India is a hub of cultural experiences and food experience. And, from every state, the food shifts and changes. So we wanted to, it's adaptation to your culture, right? That's crucial for you to become a person of that time and place. In our schools, the food variation is so varied. And so when we were deciding how we want to manage food, we kind of started very small. So parents were of the idea that one family will cook meal for the entire community. And we were really small at that point of time, Yogi, we were just 5 or 6 families, right? So if it's 5 working days, one family would cook meal and they would cook 4 times in a month. And as we have grown all across the program, from toddler community up until the elementary, one family cooks meal for the entire community of children. So the children just come with a bottle of water and we have a roster system where one family is cooking meal. So the meal comes from the parents' home, and in the elementary environment or in the children's house, that is 3 to 6 and 6 to 12, the children are also engaged in preparing one part of the dish that goes with the main, with the meal, so that shifts and changes each day. So the elementary children might be learning how to make dosas from scratch. They may be learning how to make rasam, which is like a soup with spices. And dosa is almost like your, I would say, what would you relate to? Like pancakes, but savory pancakes kind of a thing. So they learn how to make it from end to end. And they may also learn how to make chutneys, so the elementary children and the children's hour children in the morning, that's their work cycle, which is 3 hours. 2 or 3 children are engaged in preparing food for the community, along with the main meal that comes from one family. We did a survey amongst the parent community asking them if they want to let go of this huge travel of cooking meals for 30 children or 25 children. Can you imagine cooking for 25 elementary children or 30 elementary children? But unanimously, every parent said, no, we would rather cook meal for 25 to 30 children than pack a box of lunch every morning. They love that experience. They say it's hard work, that one day taking off time to cook meal for the community. But they say it's very satisfying. And the sense of ownership and pride that their child takes in planning the menu as to what they would want to bring to the community is something that they're not willing to let go of. So if you ask me, one family cooks meal for 25 to 30 children, and then the children are engaged in cooking one portion of the dish that goes to the main meal. It's full on. Our kitchens are full, busy, and the children take great pride in it. Of course, with the adolescent, they prepare their lunch from scratch. They're engaged in preparing. So, but look at the foundation that we have laid from the toddler community up until the children's house in the elementary, that in the adolescent community, they can prepare some complex Indian dishes. Yogi, I think you might be aware that Indian dishes are quite complicated. And I grew up watching my mom just in the kitchen, because they go from end to end. They don't leave anything to the last minute. Even your spices, they're roasting it and grinding it. So the children in the adolescent community are preparing their lunch each day. It doesn't come from home. The adolescents take up the responsibility to prepare a made meal each day, every day. They are here today because of the work that happened in the toddler community. You build systematically in terms of the skill and the capacity. Yeah. And the parents are big advocates too. We have a lot of support from the parent community. I think they also trust us because we've been able to implement Montessori philosophy and pedagogy without compromising it, without diluting it. And they see the outcomes. They see the outcomes of good implementation.
Oh, you have created, with the help of your parents, this village in which the children are just thriving. And I can say that only because I know a little bit about your village, your trips out and outings and parents, and very similar to all the things I wanted. We had snacks that parents brought every week and contributed, which the children prepared. But in some way, having that contribution is so important. And thank you, thank you, thank you for sharing how you're making this meals possible. And kudos to your parents who are so persevering in continuing this journey with you because you're passionate about all the kids. I can sense exactly why you do what you do because you want every child to have, meet their maximum potential and all out. You want them on time because you don't want them to miss out on the 3-hour work period. And it's all for the child, but to engage the parents and to keep them engaged and have them stay as a part of the community is a true testament to the outcomes that they get to see by sticking around and not leaving after the A2I program or primary because they've joined this journey with you. It's been a sheer pleasure talking with you, Kavya, and your openness, your theory, your practical, and just you made it all sound so doable and simple, which it is. So for that, I'm grateful. And I hope that you will come back for more.
Thank you so much, Yogi. I had a lot I wanted to share. I do also feel like, oh my God, I wanted to share this and I wanted to share that. But time is a constraint. And, I'm so glad that, I was able to share, like, I almost call it like a brief capsule of the work that we do here at the Montessori School and Kriyasthala. And yes, I think this work would not be possible if I didn't have an army of team that works relentlessly. I'm grateful to my team that I'm able to take out this time to be here and talk to you. And of course, yes, you said it right. It's the perseverance of the parent community. They are the driving force behind everything that we do. And I think that, everything is a collaborative effort. Parents open up as much as you open up. And I think it's really important that we keep our doors open all the time.
That's right.
And then we are willing to get into a partnership with a parent community with trust, faith, one single goal, that is to meet the needs of the child, every child in your care.
Thank you again. Thank you for listening to Now What podcast. We have had some great speakers. We had Kavya today who spoke about birth to 3. We've had Edward that just spoke about having a Montessori school environment. And I hope that you will continue to learn and grow with the podcast that we share. The goal for this podcast creation is to create a world where children get to thrive and embrace all of the variety that the life has to offer. Thank you for all the speakers who come on, and thank you, Kavya.